Hello, good evening, I am Joseph Filmography, and one of my favorite albums of all time is Hopes and Fears by Keane. I absolutely love the type of music that just has the listener aimlessly drifting in vibe land, and Keane are the absolute kings of that sound. They knock it out of the park and into next Tuesday. But if you take Hopes and Fears and combine it with their second album, Under the Iron Sea, you have yourself the ultimate rainy day playlist. Something really cool about these albums is that all of the music fits together really nicely, even though there's a lot of diversity in the sort of tone of each different songs. These albums have a good mix of quiet and melancholic songs like Atlantic, with some more amped up and energetic songs like Your Eyes Open. But no matter which song you're choosing, it would still go really well with this footage. But a smaller detail about these albums that I adore is the visual side of things. The album covers go really nicely together, with Under the Iron Sea having a white backdrop and blue waves in the foreground, and Hopes and Fears just being a blank, pure white background with black text. I love the Hopes and Fears album cover. It is clean and minimalistic and simple without feeling stale like a lot of corporate logos these days. But more than that, the white backdrop I think serves as a sort of transparent background where you could envision the Hopes and Fears logo on anything. It's almost like you can just take that Hopes and Fears logo and put it up on the clouds overhead, as if it's like some kind of massive transcendental Keane concert. So the point I'm making is, I think this album is really cool, and I sure am glad that nothing terrible and awful would have happened to Hopes and Fears around the time of, I don't know, May 10th, 2024. Oh wait! You see, around the time of May 10th, 2024, I popped open my rainy day playlist, only to be shocked to see that Hopes and Fears was no longer white. It was now green, tan, or globe themed. And I don't think it looked like that before. See, what really happened here is that none of these album covers are the Hopes and Fears album cover. The green cover actually comes from Hopes and Fears Deluxe. The globe design comes from the Keane's Greatest Hits album, and the tan design actually came from a brand new, released that day album, Hopes and Fears 20th Anniversary. To celebrate this important day, Keane released remastered and updated versions of all of those old tracks. And I think there's even some new stuff in that album. And hey, that's great. We love to see that. But how did it get on my playlist? You see, what I discovered is that when the Hopes and Fears 20th Anniversary album came out, the original was just removed. Poof! No longer on YouTube Music, I can't listen to it anymore, no more Hopes and Fears for you. Now, I'm sure this wasn't a Keane decision, it was probably some kind of publisher or service decision, but it seems like a really weird and kind of pointless thing to do. But to be fair, I know this is kind of a nitpick. Album covers, like I said, have no impact whatsoever on your listening experience, and these tracks are all as good, if not better, than they've ever been. So really, there isn't much of a problem here, is there? Well, dear viewer, you may have noticed that this video is far from over. Last summer, I discovered jazz pianist Keiko Matsui, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and I immediately fell in love with her music, her quickly becoming a pinnacle addition to the rainy day playlist. Now, something you've got to understand, I love my rain, and I love my rainy day playlist, so rising that high on the rainy day playlist tier list is a very big deal. That means I very much enjoyed her music. So it really sucked when literally the day after I discover this artist, my favorite song of hers is taken off of streaming services. The day after I discovered her music. Gone. No more. No more music. And I was baffled by this, because with something like Keane, sure, you can still listen to the music and enjoy it just as much, but the music just being gone? There is no other way to enjoy it. It's not there anymore. But it's not all doom and gloom, ladies and gentlemen, because fascinatingly, shortly after I noticed my beloved Hopes and Fears was taken away from me, I noticed Whisper from the Mirror was back on my playlist. We did it! We won! The music has returned to us, we have it back, and nothing like this tragedy will ever happen again as long as the Earth is in rotation of the sun. Right? Regrettably, not every artist gets the same fortune that Keiko Matsui did. Yuka Kitamura is one of my biggest inspirations. She was one of the composers on Dark Souls 2 and was the primary composer on Dark Souls 3, and her music is unbelievably good. The Dark Souls soundtracks are incredibly special to me, and many people loved listening to this music, but you may have noticed how I'm using the past tense here. You see, in 2022, From Software released their newest game, Elden Ring, to a massive fanfare. People love this game and love its music, rightfully so, but it took a while for Elden Ring's soundtrack to get added to streaming services, and 6 months after the game's launch, when the soundtrack finally released, the masses rejoiced for about 15 minutes before we all realized, oh, all of the Dark Souls soundtracks are gone. Just imagine for a second spending years of your life working on this game franchise that gets insanely popular and gets you millions and millions of listens, only for all of that to just be erased on a whim. And what's really fascinating is that when I was doing some research for this, I saw a lot of people mentioning that the soundtracks were just region locked. Now, all of the discussions I could find were a couple years old at this point, but I thought it was still worth investigating, so I cracked open my VPN to do a little country hopping and see where I could find these soundtracks, and interestingly, I came up completely empty. It did not matter which country I went to, Spotify and YouTube Music gave me no results. But what's really fascinating, Apple Music was showing these soundtracks available for every country. And this was a colossal discovery for me, because if the Dark Souls soundtracks were exclusive to Apple Music, that means there's some kind of exclusivity deal going on here, and maybe there's something more worth researching. However, when I went back to double check before this recording, it was gone off of Apple Music too! It's like they specifically removed it to thwart my evil schemes. So I don't know what's going on with Dark Souls these days, but I don't think these albums are ever coming back, if you want me to be frank. But at the very least, we can at least be thankful that this is the only example of this ever happening with video game music, and nothing terrible like this would have ever happened to anybody else on the planet. Right? You took my Keane from me, and you took my jazz piano from me, and you took my Dark Souls from me. But even all of that, I could abide. Until you took my Casey Edwards from me, and now there is a fight to be had. You may not know Casey Edwards by name, but I can almost guarantee that you are familiar with his work, because Casey Edwards is the guy who gave us this. Yeah, that Casey Edwards. His work, especially on Devil May Cry, has been monumentally impactful for over 100 million people. And that's kind of an impressive number. I mean, Bury the Light is the anthem of motivation. It is a pinnacle addition to every gym playlist. I never do planks without Bury the Light. So imagine my shock when I see that Casey Edwards has posted this. Waking up to 65 million plays being deleted from my artist page is a great feeling. Looks like Bury the Light metadata was messed with too. How do you fumble this hard? And now Bury the Light is gone too. Looks like my true monthly listeners are about to be exposed. I'll be told the tracks will be up soon, but I don't know when. Now this easily could have been the saddest day in Gym Bro history if it wasn't for this next post on August 4th. Bury the Light and Devil Trigger are starting to show up again, albeit with incorrect metadata. Sorry Victor and Ali, we'll sort out soon. And then he proceeds to talk about his song Fire Inside, which is awesome and you should listen to it, but can we just talk about this for a second? Like, oh hey, that's 100 million plays there. That's not too shabby. I'm proud of you, kid, that's good. But yeah, we don't really need that. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know what's going on here anymore. But I can tell you that I'm starting to notice a trend that's kind of worrying me. I've made it very clear in previous videos that I want to work in the games industry once I graduate from college. I want to do sound design and someday, if I'm lucky enough, maybe compose music for video games. That's the dream job. But to be frank, job security is a very big concern in the games industry these days, where not even a massive video game success can protect developers from losing their jobs in mass layoffs. And as if that's not enough of a concern, then you can factor in the fact that maybe even my work itself might be removed. You can see where this might start to raise a concern. And at a time where so many things are completely reliant on an online connection and on streaming, seeing even the greatest giants be torn down isn't exactly making me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. However, as my king once said,
there's always hope.
We shouldn't be leaving on a downer because it's not really all doom and gloom. So before we round out this video, I want to point out three main things. Number one, it would be disingenuous of me to act like the era of buying albums on iTunes is some golden age that we should return to, because it's not. To be frank, it's way more convenient to just stream all of your music and pay a monthly fee instead of having to manually buy every single album that you want to listen to. That being said, we do still have two main glimmers of hope. Number one being that streaming still remains a very good deal. Not if you're an artist and not if you're the actual streaming service, but for the consumer, streaming is great. Because back when I was just manually ripping MP3s from CDs, it was hard to discover new music. And on streaming, I can discover new music all the time. That's how I discovered Keiko Matsui. I would never even care about her music if it wasn't for the benefits of streaming. These platforms are fantastic. I love them, I love their features, and I love all of the good that they've done for the average person being able to listen to music. I think that's great. But, that being said, they're not without their flaws. And that's where the final point comes in, is that the way we listen to music is always changing. Just think about the evolution of vinyls to radio to CDs to MP3 players and now streaming. Streaming's been going strong for a few years at this point, and sooner or later, something's gonna come up to replace it. If I was to give you my 2 cents, I would say a good solution might be a streaming service like Spotify or YouTube Music that also has the functionality of the iTunes Store, where if you particularly love a certain album, you can actually purchase it, and that'll automatically download all of the songs onto your phone, and you will keep them forever. Tell me what you think about that. What do you think would be a good solution to all of this? Because I'll tell you, Removing Bury the Light doesn't solve anything, man. Has any of your favorite music suffered this fate? Let me know in the comments below, and if you liked the video, feel free to give it a thumbs up, maybe subscribe, and if you hated it, I wouldn't recommend that you do that. That's probably not a good idea. As for the future, every time I try making a schedule, I never adhere to it, so I'm not gonna say anything about a schedule today. Maybe I'll upload sometime in the next 8 months, and hey, maybe I won't. Who's to say? But for today, that's all I've really got, so ladies and gentlemen, I am out. Have a good one.